Well, welcome everyone as we continue in our Faith Focus series as we look at how to share our faith in Australia in 2026.
Yeah.
And so it's been a good time, I think. And as we've been encouraging people to walk alongside others and encourage others. What are we going to dip our toes into today?
Yeah, well, today we're talking about sharing your testimony.
Yeah.
You know, it's something that I think it's a bit of a buzz kind of phrase for Christians, sharing your testimony, my testimony.
And it's really God's testimony, isn't it? It's what God's done in you, not necessarily what you've done at all, really, other than saying yes.
Yeah.
So how do you think we should go about preparing, and why should we prepare our testimony?
Yeah, well, first of all, what is a testimony? Let's talk about that.
Okay.
And I think traditionally a testimony has kind of been like your come in a faith story. Like, where's that kind of transition period where you became a Christian or when you chose to say yes to Jesus? I think it is that. I think it is the story of, what God's done in my life. What was it about the gospel that really kind of brought me to faith? But there's also different testimonies we can share about ways God has interacted in our life, things we've started to see, like you call them the fingerprints of God. And I think the more we're praying and the more we see God at work, the more stories we will have to share, more testimonies of what God has done in our life. Yeah,
so there's two types, isn't it? There's the one that says, this is what convinced me that God's real and I should submit to God and what God has done in my life since that point of time.
Yeah.
And the other is just the regular, this is what God's doing in my life. And so, and so we've got to, I think, be armed with both of those sort of stories. And, your background and my background are very different. And so my testimony is going to speak to a certain group of people, and your testimony is going to speak to a certain group of people. It doesn't have to speak to everyone. All it is simply, what was the things that really made you come to faith? Now, I always start off, and I think I shared this earlier, I always start off with the fact that my mum and dad loved me, and that I didn't come from an impoverished time. Sure, we didn't have a lot, but we weren't impoverished anymore. I didn't come from a love-starved home. Yeah. I knew I was loved.
Yeah, yeah.
But how God started to speak to me was in the area of purpose. And I felt like as I looked at the world, what was the point of life?
Yeah.
And that's what started to shift my heart. Now, that's not going to be the same for everyone. People who come from a love-starved home are not going to be impressed by my testimony whatsoever or whatever. So you've got to realize that it's your story of what God has done in you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that it is going to not suit everyone, but it's there for someone.
Yeah, and for certain people, it's going to be a really powerful story. It's going to really resonate with them. And I think those times God will make it clear when to share that particular story. I mean, one of the craziest stories I heard from someone who came to faith, I think last year or so, was I was in Melbourne actually for a conference or whatever, and I was going for a walk on a trail, and I get this message from someone who I've been kind of journeying with, and they're like, what does it mean when Jesus comes into your dream?
Yeah, that's right.
What does that mean? And so we had this conversation, and his testimony is basically God his life was so chaotic, and he was just feeling that. And in his dream, he could feel this chaos. And then all of a sudden, Jesus was there, and there was this peace that he'd not experienced before. And that was kind of for him the marker, okay, Jesus is real.
I spoke to a guy a couple of weeks ago who has just come back to church, and he just had an encounter with God. He'd grown up in church, drifted away.
Yeah.
And God showed up in a kind of like a dream, sort of maybe a vision type of thing, and did it twice. And it just radically changed his thinking about God and his purpose in life. And that's amazing.
Yeah.
I actually think your testimony is amazing, because you grew up in the church,
Yeah.
and you've stayed in the church, and God has continued to show himself faithful and real to you.
Yeah.
I think that's an amazing testimony from my point of view.
Yeah, and like I guess for me is that's not the first thing I share with people, because I guess my experience of testimonies is always this like wow moment, like this kind of I was a dirty rotten sinner and then all of a sudden Jesus saved me, which is all of our story to some degree. But like my story is very much I grew up in the church. I did not want to go to church on a Sunday for a while. I just kept getting dragged there. I think when I was younger it was a bit more exciting, but there was no real like draw card. The kids there weren't that fun, that kind of thing.
I'll let Zach know.
Yeah, this was a different church. It wasn't his church. But then it was actually Zach that invited me to this church, and I went to a church youth camp, and the speaker, I have no idea what he was speaking about. I presume it was the gospel from memory. But I had a moment with the Holy Spirit that was something I'd never felt experienced before, and just the love of Jesus, I think, was poured out in a way that I have experienced again and again. But in that moment was like, yes, Jesus is real, and I want to give my life to him.
See, the thing that Scripture says is that faith is built by testimony. So how we share what God is doing in our life builds faith, even in people who don't have faith, because it makes them question then, are they making it up? Is it real? What if it's real? What if God could do that for me? And so faith is built by us telling stories or testimonies. That's all a testimony is a story, what God has done. Yeah. Either of, how we came to faith or how God's interacting in our everyday life. And a testimony can be just as powerful as I was praying the other day, sort of seeking God about A, B, or C and D, and this is what God said to me. Yeah. And it sort of put me down a whole different path of thinking and how I live my life. That's an important testimony for some people. And you just got to realize that, how God is living and breathing through you is a story that should be shared.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, if we're going to make this really practical, there's a couple of things I'm thinking we should talk about. Okay, we haven't really pre-talked about this, but first of all, how do we prepare ourselves? Because I think in Peter it talks about being prepared with a reason for the hope you have, which I think in many ways is what God has done in your life. So how do we prepare ourselves to be ready for that? But also then, in what circumstances do we share this? When is the time we bring this out and pull this into conversation?
Yeah, well, I think it's about having a good look about when God became real to you. And so it might be a big wow moment, Holy Spirit moment like you had, or dreams. It might be how I had it, where it was people walking alongside of me and me praying, God, if you're real, reveal yourself. I think you got to have a look at that story, and then look at the things in that story that are meaningful for you. What were you feeling? What were you thinking at the time? Yeah. And how did God meet you in that space? And then just try and make it as simple as you possibly can. You don't have to fill it out with, grand words or overcomplicate it. Sometimes the testimony is, you believe that, but this is what happened to me. I was lying in bed and I said, if God, you're real, I want to know you. And the next 2 days later, someone said, do you want to know Jesus? Yeah. And that's a testimony. I mean, it's a fraction of my whole story. Yeah. But it might be just that little snippet that's needed. So I think you have to look at your story and go, okay, what parts of my story can I refine? Yeah. Now, I've told my testimony a lot, so it's really easy. And the more you tell it, the easier it is and the more you find. It's like comedians telling jokes. Yeah. What you see as a polished joke has taken hundreds and thousands of repetitions and reworking. Now, I'm not saying that our testimony should be that polished. But I think the more you think about it and the more you tell the story, and you don't have to start off by telling it to people that don't know. Start telling it to people that do know. Come to church and go, oh, can I tell you my testimony? Or can I tell you how I came to faith? And so you can just start by being excited about your story,
Yeah,
and why you should pass it on.
Yeah, so getting to know it and understand what was it and how would I convey this to people, those kinds of things.
And practice it.
Yeah.
And practice it on Christians who at the very least, their faith is going to be encouraged because they've heard a testimony of God working, and that builds faith.
Yeah.
So at the very least, you're encouraging their faith and growing their faith.
Yeah.
And the bonus is that you get to work out how you want to tell it that's really you. And that was the big thing for me was making it me, making it who I am, because it's my story, not trying to make it like someone else was telling the story.
Yeah, or like, when someone says, hey, why are you a Christian? Sometimes you feel like I have to say this in a way that defends Christianity or in a way that convinces them. But actually it's just saying this is what God did for me. And, it was very real for me.
Yeah. And so if people ask me that question, I then go back to him. Well, I asked God if he was real and he turned up.
Yeah.
That's right. And that's a testimony.
Yeah.
And they go, what do you mean he turned up? And then there's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But the testimony is, well, I actually just asked God to show himself and he did. And, yours would probably be, well, I had a moment where God just went bang.
Yeah.
And, it turned from my family's faith into my faith.
That's right. Yeah.
And so it doesn't have to be long and succinct. It just has to be thought out.
Yeah.
So you know what parts of your story you want to draw out for what occasions.
Yeah. And I think with that style of testimony, the kind of your testimony of coming to faith, like I think that people these days, like we're in a generation where everyone's got all the information they need. So they know all the debates, the arguments. They can Google why should I trust the Bible, those kinds of things. But in the context of a relationship, people are looking for that authentic, like, what does it really mean?
That's right. How does the rubber hit the road?
That's right.
My favorite expression.
Yeah.
People these days want to know what works.
Yeah.
And because there's just so much fraud out there, I suppose, or so much, that's not real. You just scroll on social media at the moment, you go, well, that's AI. I don't know how many lions I've seen eat people in the last week on Facebook.
Yeah.
So that's the power of the testimony is saying, I know God's real because God did this and God is still doing A, B, C, and D.
Absolutely.
And I think that, we don't want to be drawing on what God's doing in our life from 3 years ago. Testimony can go back. It's 30-odd years for me.
Yeah.
But what God's doing shouldn't be too long down the line. It should be last week or last month or something like that. And to a certain degree, it helps if you choose to live your life as a bit of a storyteller. So some people are natural storytellers. I worked with a natural storyteller, and whenever something funny happened to him, you would hear that same story. And I worked for him, so I traveled with him a lot. And for about 2 weeks after the funny story, every interaction this person had, he would be telling this funny story. Okay. And because he was just a natural storyteller.
Yeah.
Now that's also a learned art.
Yeah,
Okay. And so if you get into the habit of sharing anything that happens with you on a regular basis to people, one, you become more interesting at the very least. Yeah. And two, you get into the habit of saying, of talking about what's happening in your life and particularly what God is doing in your life.
Yeah.
And so it's not too far distant to go. I was at the survey the other day and the mechanic was looking at my car and I looked down, and under the mechanic's overalls were fishnet stockings. And it just made my mind blow up that I was looking at a mechanic with fishnet stockings. Now, that's a story about nothing other than the fact that it seems unusual. It's a bit unusual. To then be going, I was praying for someone the other day and they were just really on my heart. And then all of a sudden God answered the prayer, and I'm still thankful and amazed at how God stepped in. I mean, it's not too much of a leap if you are constantly telling stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with that as well, so we're talking a little bit more about what has God done recently in your life. We talked a little bit couple of weeks ago about like being curious with people, asking questions, being more interested in them. I think we probably need to grow in our lives more of a curiosity around what is God doing right now. You know, I think it's what some people call practicing the presence of God. Like, it's like, I'm just living my life, but God is doing stuff all the time.
Yep.
So it's living in a way where you're looking for what God is doing, looking for those fingerprints. So it might be, you know, like I was praying for this person and then I messaged them and then I realized God had answered their prayer. Or, you know, it might be seeing what has God done yesterday, today. Let's go back and reflect. And so I think we need to be living our lives in a way of like we're expecting God to be moving and doing stuff, but also that we're actually keeping an eye out on it. So one, we can encourage our faith, but two, we've also got these stories to tell.
And we always want to go with the positive with these stories, but we don't have to.
Yeah.
You know, so I had, for instance, I had a colleague message me on Friday and say, can you pray? I've got a member of my congregation who's really sick. He doesn't have long to live. I don't want him to die. That was the message.
Yeah.
Okay. So I messaged him and said, sure, praying. And I went and I prayed. And probably the most powerful prayer session that I've ever had in praying for someone to be healed. And he died.
Wow.
Okay. And so I'm still questioning, okay, God, what was that all about?
Yeah.
I don't understand that.
Yeah.
And to me, that's just as much of a testimony of I'm still growing in my understanding of God, and I don't understand how God works as it is that God's always turning up.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I don't doubt that God turned up. I just don't know how God turned up in that situation or why he gave me the sense of that prayer time being really powerful. You know, it was so powerful that I just started throwing people in the mix.
Wow.
You know, I just felt like the presence of God was on me. I thought, this guy's healed. Let's move on to the next person. While I'm in this zone, let's try and throw as many people into the healing bus as we can possibly get. That's how I was feeling.
Yeah.
And yet I didn't see the result that my faith was expecting.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make me doubt God. That just makes me question.
Yeah.
Okay, God, what was all that about and why was it? And I've still got to spend some time working that out.
Yeah.
Now, that's still a testimony of, well, my faith, I suppose, but a lot of people might not share that because they're worried that will say, well, see, God's not real, you know?
Yeah.
I don't think we have to worry about that. I think we just have to show people that we are on this journey with God and God is not always understandable.
Yeah, yeah.
And you just got to face it for what it is.
Yeah, and in some ways I imagine that probably speaks a lot to some people who are questioning faith at all. You know, they might have this understanding that, people just think God works all the time, but I haven't seen it happen. And then they come across you and you say, I've been praying for this guy and he's still passed away. They might say, what does that do for you?
That's
like,
right.
You know, you're still a Christian, like, you know?
Yeah, and then, and I have an opportunity to talk about my theology of healing and all those sorts of things and how I see God work and whether people accept that or not is up to them. I just don't think we should be shy in being real about our interactions with God, the good and the bad.
Yeah.
I think, the testimony that you're struggling with some parts of how God turns up and doesn't turn up is just as valid testimony as trying to keep it all rosy and peace.
Yeah, I think it really speaks to people when you're living in an unanswered prayer and people can see that you're suffering or struggling, but you still trust God and you still love him. Like that will speak volumes.
Yeah, it can do. And not to everyone. An atheist might, hop onto this podcast and go, see, God doesn't heal.
Yeah.
But, then I go back to your testimony of you praying for someone and you're healing, or my testimony and of praying for other people and then being healed. And then you go, well, God is active and God is at work. I just can't put God in a box.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other question, like what do we do? Like when are we supposed to bring these kind of testimonies out? One of my thoughts around it is when you're talking to someone and they've come with an issue. They say, I've got a really bad back. I'm really struggling. And you remember that you prayed for someone with a back the other day and God healed them.
Or they heard you tell the story of you praying for someone and they got healed, and you go, God, I want to give it a go.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you might want to go, well, you know, Pastor Nathan prayed for someone. I'm not going to take you to Pastor Nathan, but we'll can I pray for you? You know, that's fantastic. A lot of, you know, people who do healing, for instance, will tell stories of how God heals people so that their faith grows in the fact that this is what God does, and also the person who's being prayed for can. But, I think in that circumstance, you pull out a testimony every time there's a need, or every time that you can see something that's about helping people focus their attention on God. So if they're struggling financially, or they're, you know, I regularly pray for people to get jobs, and they do. You don't have to bring them to me; it's the same God, same Spirit, you know. So you can go, Pastor Barry prays for people to get jobs, and they get jobs all the time. So can I pray for you in this job? You know, so. You know, just use, it doesn't even have to be your testimony that you share, I suppose is what I'm trying to say. You can just pull out a testimony.
Yeah, absolutely.
When it comes to sharing, you know, your faith story, I think, you know, having already asked people or prayed for people or showing people what you believe, there will be a time where they'll ask you your story.
Yeah.
And that's when you share it. That's in my point of view. You know, if you're led by the Spirit to go, hey, do you want to hear how God worked in my life, then by all means go for it. But I think more times than not, your testimony is the most powerful when they ask for you, why do you believe in God, or what evidence do you have? And you can go, well, this is what happened to me.
Yeah. I think another good opportunity to share it is when you feel God prompting you to, you know, if there's someone on the side of the road or something, you stop and you say, hey, like, you know, what's going on? They tell you what's going on. You say, well, look, this is what I believe. This is what God's done for me. Can I pray for you?
Yeah,
or can I do this for you? You know?
Yep. So that's really, you know, just praying for the needs of others and using testimony as a opportunity to explain why you want to pray for them and that you expect God to answer it.
Yeah,
it's very good.
Are there other opportunities you think this is when we bring it out? Like this is a good opportunity to practice, to share, to...
Look, I think that they're the main ones. I don't think you want to go head first and just, you know, share your testimony uninvited.
Sure.
And just, even when you're going up to that stranger on the street, as the example you said, you go, can I share it with you? It's you're offering the invitation. What people don't want is to be forced to listen to your testimony when they don't want it.
Yeah, sure.
And that's most of the time when people are turned off from people sharing their faith is because it's unwanted and unasked for. Yeah. And so I think, you know, one of the things is continue to ask, can I share your story about what God's done?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, then you proceed, and they go, I'm not really interested, then just leave it alone.
Yeah.
Because in the end, you forcing your story upon them will probably do more harm than good.
Yeah, and I think if God really is moving in their heart, then they're going to want to hear it, and there's going to be something about it that really stands out to them.
Yeah. And you don't know what part of your story God's going to use. That's what I love about the adventure of faith. You just don't know what it is. You know, you don't know what's in people's hearts. You don't know what kind of prayers they've been praying, even though they might be unsure, you know. And so God will use whatever he will use for his glory. We've just got to be open to sharing it at the appropriate time.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, I hope that's been helpful for you, and that you will share your story, whether it's the story of faith or what God's been doing in your heart. I'd love to see us as a church, after church, people going around going, hey, can I tell you what God's done in me this week? Hey, can I share what I'm struggling with? Or hey, can I practice my testimony? Yeah, that would be fantastic. I'd love to see that.
That'd be good.
All right, until we see you next time, God bless.
See you later.